Let me ask you something. When was the last time you said to yourself, I love you? We say I love you to others so freely, to our children, our partners, even our pets. But when it comes to ourselves, the words don't come as easily. Why is that? Maybe because we feel we haven't earned it. Because of the things we've done, or the things we didn't do. Because we think loving ourselves is selfish, or indulgent, or something we'll get around to after we've fixed everything that's wrong with us. But has self-rejection ever truly helped us grow? Has being hard on ourselves ever brought peace? Or has it only pushed us deeper into silence, comparison, and shame? Welcome to Lotus of Dharma, a space for quiet reflection, grounded in Buddhist wisdom and dedicated to bringing compassion into everyday life. Here, we don't chase perfection. We come home to presence. Today's video is one that many hearts need to hear, because it speaks to something we rarely say out loud. How do I love myself, fully, truthfully, without apology? And before we begin, if this message resonates with you, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who may need it, and subscribe to the channel. Your presence here supports this growing circle of awareness and kindness. The Buddha once said, "One who does not know how to love themselves will struggle to truly love others." And that is where we begin. Let's explore, not just how to love, but how to begin with the one person we often forget, ourselves. You are not the label you've been carrying. There are labels we wear that no one can see, but they shape how we walk, how we speak, how we love. They are not stitched to our clothes, but etched into our thoughts. I'm too emotional. I'm not smart enough. I'm always the one who ruins things. Sometimes we picked up these labels as children, not because they were true, but because someone else said them in a moment of their own pain. A teacher who snapped, "You're so slow." A parent who muttered, "Why can't you be like your brother?" A friend who walked away without explanation, and we decided, quietly, I must not be lovable. And over time, we stopped questioning those stories. We simply wore them. We built our lives around them. We dated with them. We parented with them. We even prayed with them, secretly believing that whatever we asked for, we didn't quite deserve. I once met a man who said, "I don't go after what I really want because I already know how it'll end." He wasn't bitter, just tired. Tired of hoping. Tired of failing. Tired of the voice in his head that said, "You're not meant for more." But here's what he slowly began to see. That voice wasn't his. It was an accumulation of disappointments, misinterpretations, and unspoken griefs. And most of all, it was old. The Buddha taught that the mind is conditioned, shaped by experience, habits, and perception. What we call personality is often just repetition. And repetition is not identity. It's just a path we've walked many times, and forgotten we could step off of. If you've always seen yourself as the difficult one, it becomes hard to believe that someone could love you easily. So when love comes, you push it away, because somewhere deep down, you think you must earn it. You apologize too much. You explain yourself too much. You try to prove that you're worth keeping. But what if you already are? What if healing doesn't begin with changing your behavior, but with questioning the label behind it? Let me offer a reflection practice. It's simple, but powerful. Sit quietly. Breathe. And ask yourself, what is the name I have given myself that no longer serves me? Then wait. Something will rise. A word, a phrase, a feeling. Hold it gently. Don't rush to throw it away. Just look at it, as you might look at a child who's been hiding under the bed, scared and silent. And then ask, where did this come from? Who gave this to me? Do I still want to carry it? In the monastery, we sweep the same floor every morning. Not because it's always dirty, but because dust always returns. The same is true for these inner labels. Even when we've outgrown them, they can drift back, quietly. Not as loud accusations, but as soft hesitation, maybe I'm still not enough. That doesn't mean you've failed. It just means it's time to sweep again. To love yourself does not mean you see yourself as perfect. It means you stop believing the worst about yourself. It means you create space between who you were told you are, and who you truly are, underneath all the naming. Some days, loving yourself means standing in front of the mirror and saying nothing, just looking kindly. Other days, it means walking away from a place where your worth is questioned. And sometimes, it simply means resting, because even your tiredness deserves compassion. You do not need to be more impressive to be worthy. You do not need to be more disciplined, more beautiful, more forgiving, or more productive to be loved, especially by yourself. The next time you hear that old voice say, "You are too much," try answering softly. Or maybe I am just enough, and always have been. That moment, that gentle pause, is the beginning of freedom. And in that freedom, something remarkable begins to grow. Not perfection, but presence. Not ego, but self-kindness. Not a new label, but the quiet truth. I am not who the world said I was. I am who I choose to become, one breath, one belief, one soft moment at a time. Learning to accept mistakes, without becoming one. There is a quiet shame many people carry, not because of who they are now, but because of what they once did. Words they wish they hadn't said. Decisions made in fear. Moments they cannot go back and undo. And sometimes, the harshest judgments don't come from others, they come from within. The mind plays the same scene over and over again, like an old film reel. And the heart whispers, "If only." A man once told me, "I don't know how to forgive myself. I abandoned someone who loved me. I was young and afraid, but now, I just feel unworthy." He looked down as he said it, not asking for advice, just voicing the sentence he had been repeating in silence for years. But here's what I've come to understand. Mistakes are not the problem. It's what we do with them that matters. The Buddha never said the wise are those who never err. He said the wise are those who see clearly, and learn. Mistakes, in truth, are not stains on your soul. They are footprints, marking where you've walked, yes, but not dictating where you must go next. There is a teaching we share often in the monastery. The lotus grows from mud, not despite it, but because of it. Without the darkness of the water, the flower would never rise. In the same way, our regrets can become teachers, if we stop turning away from them, and instead begin to listen. What did that failure reveal about your fear? What did that broken moment teach you about your limits, and your longing? Where did that decision come from, and what part of you needs healing now? Sometimes, we treat ourselves as if we were court judges, condemning our past selves as guilty, with no appeal. But your past self did not have the wisdom of your present self. And your present self is not here to punish, it is here to transform. You do not grow by erasing your mistakes. You grow by standing beside them, not as enemies, but as quiet companions who once walked with you when you didn't know better. A woman once said to me, "Every time I try to move on, I hear my own voice saying, 'You don't deserve peace after what you've done.'" So I asked her, gently, "What would you say to a friend who made that same mistake?" She paused. I'd tell her she did the best she could. That she was scared. That she deserves another chance. And then she began to cry. Because she had never offered herself the same kindness she gave so easily to others. That is often the hardest part of healing, not the apology, not the admission, but the allowance. To say, "I made a mistake, and I'm still worthy of love." Forgiveness is not forgetting. It is remembering differently, with context, with compassion, with the understanding that everything we do comes from a part of us that was seeking something: safety, control, love, belonging. When you look at your past through the lens of compassion, you don't excuse what happened. You simply stop defining yourself by it. You begin to see that every regret was a lesson in longing. Every failure, a seed for humility. And every painful choice was made by someone still learning how to live. So the next time your old mistakes rise like ghosts in the night, don't run. Don't hide. Sit with them. Place a hand over your heart and say, yes, that happened. But it is not the whole of me. I am not finished becoming. And here is the quiet miracle. When you stop trying to fix your past, you begin to heal your future. You begin to make space for softness. You begin to trust that growth is not linear, and redemption is not earned, it is received, breath by breath, as you return again and again to the truth of this moment. You are still here. You are still learning. And you are still worthy. Stop criticizing yourself. There is a voice inside many of us that never learned to speak gently. It does not shout, but it lingers, in the pause after a mistake, in the silence before sleep, in the moments when we feel unseen. It is the voice that says, you should have known better, or you'll never get this right, or this is just who you are, too much, not enough, broken. We grow so accustomed to it that we stop noticing it. We think it is just part of being honest with ourselves. But honesty without compassion becomes cruelty. And cruelty, even when aimed inward, does not create strength. It creates shame. Somewhere along the way, we were taught that if we are hard enough on ourselves, we won't repeat our mistakes. That judgment is the path to growth. That harshness means responsibility. But the truth is, growth does not come from fear. It comes from care. Just as a tree does not bloom faster when yelled at, the heart does not soften through punishment. It softens when it is safe. And it is safety, not perfection, that creates change. I once met a woman who told me she couldn't look at herself in the mirror without listing everything she wanted to change. Her posture. Her face. The sound of her voice. It had become a ritual, a moment of quiet self-rejection, repeated every morning. And yet, she was kind to everyone else. She offered love without question. But to herself, only correction. Only critique. And isn't that so often the case? That we extend patience to strangers, but not to our own breath? The Buddha taught that the way we speak, in thought, in word, in tone, becomes the shape of our world. Right speech is not only how we address others. It is how we speak in the silence of our own mind. And every word, especially the unspoken ones, plants a seed. So begin here, notice. Not to judge yourself for being judgmental, but to bring the light of awareness into a pattern that has grown in darkness. Notice when you shrink after saying the wrong thing. Notice when you brace yourself before you even begin. Notice how quickly you rush to assume that the worst version of you is the most true. And then, offer a pause. In that pause, ask, what would kindness say here? Not to make excuses. Not to run away. But to meet yourself the way you would meet someone who is trying. Someone who is healing. Someone who is still learning how to be human, because you are. One small practice you can try is this: each time you hear that critical voice rise up, even subtly, place a hand on your chest and breathe. Don't argue. Don't resist. Just breathe into the space that voice is trying to fill. And then, quietly, say to yourself, I'm doing the best I can right now. And that is enough for this moment. Not forever. Not for always. Just for now. In the monastery, we clean our spaces not because they are filthy, but because attention is a form of love. To sweep the floor is to honor the room. To breathe with our pain is to honor the soul. To speak gently, even when we have fallen, is to remember that every being deserves to be met with tenderness, including ourselves. Criticism may feel familiar. It may even feel like control. But it is not peace. And peace, like any seed, needs good soil. So plant different words. Softer ones. Truthful, but merciful. I'm still learning. This was hard for me. I didn't handle it well, but I see it now, and I want to do better. These are not excuses. They are bridges, from where we've been, to where we wish to go. The voice you speak to yourself with becomes the atmosphere of your life. Make it one where you can breathe. Accepting imperfection. There is a quiet kind of suffering that comes not from what we lack, but from the belief that we should be more than we are. In a world that praises polish and perfection, we begin to see our imperfections as flaws, our softness as weakness, our scars as failures. We compare our lives to images, curated, filtered, and distant, and wonder why we still feel incomplete. But nature, in all its wisdom, never aimed for perfection. Look at the trees, none of them grow in straight lines. Their branches twist, their bark peels, some lean awkwardly toward the light, yet we do not judge them. We admire their character, their resilience, their ability to grow regardless of how uneven the soil. The Buddha never said we must be perfect, he taught that we must be present. That suffering arises when we resist the reality of what is, when we want the flower to bloom before it is ready, or wish the rain would fall on someone else's land. I once sat with a woman who said, "I hate how easily I cry. I wish I were stronger." She had spent years holding back tears, pretending to be unaffected, always putting on a brave face. But behind that armor was a tenderness that longed to be seen. As we spoke, I asked, "Who told you that tears mean weakness?" She paused, and then whispered, "Everyone." No one. And in that silence, she realized, the world had never truly taught her to embrace her full self. It had taught her to perform safety by suppressing emotion. But what if crying was not weakness, but evidence of a heart still open, still alive? What if our imperfections are not burdens, but invitations, to meet ourselves with compassion, to meet each other with realness, not roles? Perfection, as we imagine it, is often sterile. It leaves no room for surprise, no space for grace. But imperfection allows for growth. It is the soil in which we learn humility. It is the space where love becomes unconditional. No one ever says, "I loved her because she never made a mistake." We say, "I loved her because she was real. Because she showed up, even when she was afraid. Because she tried, even when she stumbled." And so it is with ourselves. To live fully is not to never falter, it is to fall and rise with gentleness. To look in the mirror and say, "This, too, is me," not with shame, but with understanding. In the monastery, we are taught to handle old bowls and cracked cups with care, not because they are fragile, but because they have served. Every chip holds a story. Every imperfection reminds us that something has been used, loved, lived. Why, then, do we hide our own wear and tear? Why do we pretend that time has not touched us, or that pain has not shaped us? The beauty of impermanence is that nothing is fixed, not even our self-perception. The sadness you feel today may soften tomorrow. The doubt that haunts you now may dissolve in the light of your next kind act. We are, all of us, unfinished, not broken, but becoming. So let go of the mirror that only reflects what's missing. Find a new mirror, one that reflects your courage, your laughter lines, your quiet efforts. Speak to yourself as you would to someone you love, not with expectations, but with tenderness. Let your life be lived, not edited. Let your spirit unfold, not controlled. And above all, remember, the cracks in your story do not ruin it. They let the light in. Imperfection is not the opposite of beauty, it is its truest form. Loving yourself is not a destination to be reached, but a rhythm to be remembered. It is not a switch you flip, nor a prize you win once and hold forever. Rather, it is something quiet and ongoing, like the rising of the sun each morning, unnoticed by many, yet essential. Some days, it may come naturally, as if your own heart opens effortlessly toward itself. But on other days, it will feel more like effort, like walking upstream, like tending a fire that refuses to catch. That is when it matters most. Many people speak of self-love as if it were a feeling, something warm and beautiful that arises when everything is going well. But in truth, Self-love is not a feeling. It is a practice. A deliberate turning toward yourself, again and again, with patience instead of pressure, with gentleness instead of judgment. So how do we practice it? Start with attention. When you wake up, before you pick up your phone, before the demands of the world rush in, place a hand on your heart and breathe. Not to fix anything, not to force positivity, but simply to say, I am here, and that is enough for now. This is not an affirmation. It is an acknowledgement. You begin the day not by running from yourself, but by returning. Throughout the day, pay attention to the small choices. Are you speaking to yourself with kindness? Are you honoring your limits? Are you allowing rest, or pushing through pain out of guilt or habit? Loving yourself often looks like the simplest thing, stepping away from a conversation that drains you, closing the computer when your eyes are tired, saying no without apology when your body or spirit says enough. If you want something more structured, you can create a small ritual. Each evening, take 5 minutes to reflect, what did I do today that supported me? Not what made me successful or productive, but what nourished me. Maybe you drank enough water. Maybe you asked for help. Maybe you forgave yourself, just a little. Write it down. Let it be real. These small recognitions are like stones placed gently in the foundation of your inner home. And when criticism arises, as it inevitably will, do not try to silence it with force. Instead, sit beside it as you would a frightened child. Ask it softly, what are you trying to protect me from? Often, beneath self-criticism lies fear, fear of being rejected, of being seen as not enough, of being hurt again. When you understand the fear, compassion naturally follows. In the monastery, we are taught that love does not mean the absence of difficulty, it means the willingness to stay, even when difficulty arises. So it is with self-love. You will not always feel loving toward yourself. But you can always return to loving action. You can always choose the next kind word, the next kind breath, the next kind step. The heart softens not through demands, but through repeated kindness. And over time, this practice becomes a refuge, a place within you that no one else can take away. Not because you have built a wall around yourself, but because you have built a home, a place where your spirit can rest, where you are not asked to be more than you are, and where even your brokenness is treated with respect. So if today you feel far from yourself, if you are tired of trying, if the voices of doubt are loud, do not run. Sit quietly. Touch your hand to your heart. And whisper, if only in thought, even now, I will not turn away. That one gesture, done with sincerity, is an act of radical healing. And it is always available. Every day. Every breath. Until self-love is not a practice you return to, but the ground you walk on. So perhaps now, after everything we've reflected on, we might ask again. What labels have you been carrying, and are you ready to set them down? Not by force. Not in anger. But with the same care you would give to a memory, recognizing that it was part of your journey, but it is no longer your name. Because you are not your past. You are not what others failed to see in you. You are not the voice of fear that echoes in your mind when you feel small. You are the space beneath all that. The stillness. The breath. The awareness that says, even now, I choose to meet myself with kindness. The Buddha taught, you yourself, as much as anyone in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection. And what a radical thing it is, in a world that tells us to prove, to perfect, to earn, to instead pause, and offer ourselves compassion. To choose softness. To choose truth. To choose presence over perfection. If this video touched you in any way, I invite you to leave a comment below. What label are you ready to question? What new way of seeing yourself would feel more true? And if you found value here, please consider liking this video, sharing it, and subscribing to the channel. Because there are so many people walking through life believing they are only what they've been called. Maybe today, This message can be a small reminder. You are not a label. You are a living, unfolding story, and it's never too late to turn the page. Until next time, breathe gently, speak kindly, and walk softly with the one person you'll be with for the rest of your life, yourself.